Is the 11th of April, 2014. My name is Pauline Gravier, and I am interviewing Ethel Silvergold Zale. And Ethel, would you tell us a little bit about what you know of your family's history? You were telling me earlier that your father came over, and I don't know when. Would you talk about your dad and what you remember?
I know that he came from Europe and somehow settled in Dallas and went into the bakery business with the Weinstein family on Harwood Street in South Dallas. And as I understand, it was a thriving bakery. They did a lot of business, of course, for the Jewish settled people who were in South Dallas, but also he went to other cities. And in fact, he was delivering bagels and breads to a bris in Greenville, Texas. The tire blew out on his truck or car, and it turned over, and he was killed. At that time, I had just been born. I was 3 months old, and so I don't know a lot about my father except that from what I have heard that he was a wonderful, fine man, and I'm sure that he was.
And he already had a Jewish home when this happened, and
yes, he was married to my mother, and there were 2 other girls older than I. I was the baby.
And they are living in Dallas too. Would you tell us their names?
Oh yes, my sisters are Frances, now Coleman, and married to Red Coleman, and my the middle sister is Ruth Levy, married to America first. He had been in the Russian army and somehow got out, and as soon as he could, I think, he came to America with his little sewing machine and worked for many years, I'm not sure how many, and then brought over my grandmother, my mother, and all her siblings. And they were very close and helped raise us after our father died. In fact, we lived in a duplex on South Boulevard in Harwood, and were very close to my grandparents. They had a store. My grandfather had a little dry goods store on Deep Elm, and after my father died, my mother went into business with him to raise her children, raise her daughters.
You said she was very young when she...
She was very young. She was 24 when my father was killed.
And she had the three children.
Yes.
That's really something.
Yes. She was an incredibly fabulous woman, devoted to her children. In fact, she never married again until in her 40s, after my 2 older sisters were married, and I was pretty much ready to marry. She wanted to be sure her time and her love, and she raised her 3 girls.
Tell us what it was like growing up. Your mother worked, so tell us what it was like growing up in South Dallas at that time.
It was wonderful. We had a wonderful, wonderful youth. Many of the Jewish families lived on South Boulevard. You could walk up and down the street and find your friends, not be afraid to, just to have parties, to go to school. We walked everywhere. And although she worked, and I sometimes wonder how, she was always there for us in the evening. We couldn't wait for her to get home. She would sit and study with us. She would talk to us, and they say love is spelled T-I-M-E. So we had time with her, and the weekends were devoted completely to us. Although we spent much of our time on Deep Elm, which was a great education in itself. You learned to have compassion for people that weren't as blessed as you were, and although we were not rich in any way, we always knew that there were others who needed more than we needed, and we were raised by my mother to give charity. I have told this story, but I think I do remember sitting by her on the weekends. On Sunday, she'd write out her little bills, and she would pick out the charities from the mail and put $1 in different envelopes, and I was allowed to put it in and lick it. So I learned to give charity. She was a wonderful role model, not just in talking, but into her actions.
And that has carried through your life, hasn't it?
Yes, it really has. I didn't know it at the time, but I feel it has influenced me very much. Of course, I know it has.
The first thing I think I became aware of was your efforts with Golden Acres. Could you tell us about that and how you got started there?
Yes, but I do want to go back to high school because
I do.
I think it was fabulous.
Go back to
Shall we go back to high school?
I'd love you.
All right. I went to Forest Avenue High School, and I think that might have been, I'm sure it was, some of the happiest days of my life. We had so many friends that were all at school. And I, because of my mother, I was determined to do well, and I did. I loved art, and I ended up having some art scholarships when I graduated, and I won the Daughters of the American Revolution scholarship, believe it or not. I don't know how I got that in the city, and I was valedictorian. So and I have to say, I was the first woman president of the student body. So,
what school was that?
That was Forest Avenue High School, a wonderful school that there was all the Jewish children in South Dallas, and I went to Forest Avenue High School, and at that time you were the in crowd if you were smart and studied hard and did well. That's what was admired. And we all were very competitive, but all very good friends. And we had a great social life. We had parties all the time in each other's homes. And that was so much fun.
Tell us about the dances and the Sweet 16 dances.
Yes, the great Sweet 16 parties were at Lee Hall in Lemon Avenue and Turtle Creek. And just by chance, I have to throw in, I now live across the street from Lee Hall. And I look down and remember those incredible dances where we would have a dance card, and you were a nervous wreck to be sure that some boy would ask you to dance and come over and fill up your dance card. And then I believe the parents started filling them out, and then you had to dance with whoever was on your card. But it was so much fun. We had the Sweet 16 parties, and they were wonderful times. So we had a great teenage years and great growing up, and everybody worked. I worked at Baker Shoes on Saturday, or in the store during Christmas in my mama's store. And everybody worked. We all worked. Went to school, did whatever we could do, and
tell them about walking on the High Holy Days and what we used to do socially on the High Holy Days.
Well, we would meet in the park, at Shearith Israel, at City Park, and everyone would go outside and have wonderful times in the park while our parents and grandparents were praying for us, we hope. And however, we lived a block from Temple Emmanuel. So although my grandparents were at Shearith, and we would go during the High Holy Days, usually to Shearith Israel, we didn't have a car, so we walked that one block to Temple Emmanuel. And on Saturdays, when my two older sisters were usually doing something and I was still left at home with my grandmother next door, I would walk every Saturday morning to temple and go to services. And I don't know what possessed me to do that. I just liked it. And to this day, I can remember almost every prayer that's recited at temple. I grew up with it. And,
it's different now.
It's different. There's a different prayer book, and I've seen the old one. I love it. It's the one I remember. And Rabbi Lefkowitz was a big influence in our lives. I think my mother would go and ask him a lot of advice, and he was a great rabbi.
And he only lived 2 blocks away from the temple himself.
I went, yeah, and we were confirmed at temple. And
this is the old temple.
The old temple on the corner of South Boulevard and Harwood, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Park Row, I think, was the corner we were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you were married in the old...
I was married by Rabbi Olin. Yes, in the, well, at those days, you could marry in a hotel, and we were married to my first husband, David Frankfurt, in the at the Adolphus Hotel where we had the reception, and Rabbi Olin. It was our.
And so rabbi. After high school, what?
Well, anyway, before I was married, yes. So after high school, I used my scholarship to go to SMU, and. In those days, you married very young. You were but I did go for a year and a half to SMU, and there is where I met my husband. He was at SMU and married early.
Did you?
Very early. I was 18.
I know you became an interior designer after you married, but was that after you had children, or how did that work?
Yes, after I had 5 children, a son, identical twin daughters, a son, and another daughter, 3 girls and 2 boys. And when the youngest daughter was in 2nd grade, I felt now that I could get away a little, and I went back to college, to a junior college, El Centro, that was right in town, and got a degree in interior design, and then took boards and tests that you had to take to be a professional member of the American Society of Interior Design, ASID, and that made you a professional. And then I worked. I thought it would just be helping some friends and doing a few homes, but it grew and grew, and I did a lot of work.
Yeah, there were some very well-known places, too. Can you share that with us?
Well, I worked at part of the Columbian Club at that time, a lot of office projects, a lot of homes, but in all my work, the things I'm most proud of was, well, I was on the board at Shearith Israel for many years. I was the head of the decor, and I had to pick out everything that happened, and was very involved with the first restoration of the synagogue, and worked with the architects on that, and always did everything at Shearith Israel, and then began the work at all the renovation and design work at Golden Acres, and then later for the first building for Jewish Family Service. So those 3 pro bono jobs, I said I don't think I was that good, but I was free. So everybody asked me to do it. And I loved doing those important places.
That's wonderful.
And the other great thing was doing jobs with individuals we made so many friends, wonderful, lifelong friendships that I still enjoy today so much. It was a very happy job. Mm-hmm. And then I could also be free to be with my children and later my grandchildren, and it was on my own time.
And speaking of that, just tell us now so I don't forget, how many, we know you have had 5 children, and what about grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Well, my 5 children, and of course their spouses are my children. And we have 14 grandchildren, 4 of whom are married, and there are 3 weddings coming up. And now I have 3 great-grandchildren and 2 babies, please God, will be born this summer. We went on a family trip to celebrate my 80th birthday at Christmas time, and we were 33 people immediate family. And
that's amazing.
So, and we're growing, thank God.
And do most of them live around Dallas or in Dallas?
Yeah, 3 of the children live here, and they're close. One is in Austin, and one is in Texarkana. So 2-3 hours away by car, so we get to be together.
You have a dynasty.
No, I have a blessing.
That's really incredible. Besides the interior design, which a lot of it was pro bono, which is a wonderful gift in itself, tell us about how you got started working at the original Golden Acres out in East Dallas. Or Garland.
Well, I was familiar with Golden Acres. My grandfather was there, and then my stepfather was there after my mother passed away. And I would be out there, and I had a very, very dear friend. We became dear friends, Regine Ginsburg, who said to me one day, they would have birthday parties once a month, every 2 months, and we were there, and she said, do you know they don't even serve ice cream? And they don't give them a gift, and this is terrible. We need to do something about this. And there had been 2 women or 3 that had formed a little auxiliary, and Regine and I decided to help them really build this up into an auxiliary that helped. There was so much work and so much to be done for the residents to make their life, which was our mission, full of dignity and a better life. And so we formed Friends of Golden Acres, which was amazing. We raised millions of dollars somehow. We had just letting people know the needs, and in the process we completely renovated all the rooms, the bathrooms. We started a gymnasium in sorts, a physical therapy department. We built a room where after strokes they could learn to use their hands in different ways and help aids. We just did everything, and the kitchens and the dining room. I mean, we really got this whole city involved. It was an easy job. You just let them know the needs, and they really, really responded.
Well, it was very impressive. There were literally so much you did that Federation had not been able to pay for.
Well, that's true. There was no money. And there, too, I got to use my decorating skills in the rooms, and it was a labor of love. We redid the country store, which was renamed Annabelle's because after my mother Belle and Anne Frankfurt, my mother-in-law, it was a place they loved. It was a pleasure to be there. The residents would talk about going out to lunch, and that meant they could eat lunch in the country store. It meant so much to them. And to be able to go in and buy some lotion or a handkerchief, or it was a shopping experience, and they were a lunch experience for these women and men, and they loved it. And
lovely,
it was,
lovely. How many years did that entail?
We worked, Regine was the first president, and I think she was the president for over 10 years, and then I was the president for 2 years, going on 3, and then Renee Stanley, I think, was the president for like a year, and then
what happened?
The legacy was being built, and the needs weren't as great there.
And then what happened?
Somehow, when the new legacy was built, and then ultimately Golden Acres was sold. And so the funds we had which were still quite a lot of funds that we had raised the money, we gave wonderful shows. Once at the Majestic, and once we honored the 5 people who had begun the original Golden Acres at a huge fair. We had 800 for lunch and like 1,000 a night. This was such a small group. We really were young and thought we could do anything. We didn't realize it was impossible, so nothing was. And we raised, that's how we raised so much money in donations. But anyway, the money we still had went to the legacy and was used for the Legacy North, which many of the people from Golden Acres were transferred to the Legacy North. Not North, I'm sorry, the Legacy South.
I often wondered what kind of mixed emotions you must have had when Golden Acres was sold.
Well, it was sad, and we had a project that raised a lot of money. We tiled all the walls in the country store with a family's name, and we had trees of life with all their children on it. And I so wanted to bring those tiles with us, but when we tried to take them off, they cracked, and we would have had to cut out the whole wall. But it was hard to leave projects that we had worked so hard.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happened to them. They may have torn them down, but they were full of love and they did their job. So I guess
so tell us about Jewish Family Service, because what you've done there is also remarkable.
Well, we weren't needed as much. There was not Golden Acres, but of course there was the new Legacy, and I served on a board or an advisory board there to help when the new one was built, to pick out fabrics and colors. And they had a professional crew from Austin or New York or somewhere, but we had a committee to look at it, give our opinion. But then I was asked when Jewish Family Service got their building where they are now in Arapahoe, the president at that time, which was Dr. Pollock, asked me if I would work with the architects in picking out fabrics, materials, and furniture, and I said, of course. And I went to where I really didn't, as much as I had done in the city, I really didn't know exactly what Jewish Family Service did. And I thought, if I don't know, I don't think anybody really understands. They were in a very small office, so cramped and so in need of bigger spaces. And I thought, and then as I was working, they needed a room for the children who were getting therapy, a play, they call it play area, where they could help those with problems. And they had needed rooms for adult, for grief counseling, and they needed a room for the career. They helped find jobs. And the food pantry was wonderful. They gave food, and I said, my goodness, nobody knows about all this. And I just thought we need to get the word out and let the city know what we do. So one of the things that I came up with was an idea of a lunch involving women, because they get the job done and are influential. And we started the Woman-to-Woman Luncheon. At that time, in a backyard with 200 people, because we could only use her gazebo and not the home. It was a beautiful yard and a beautiful home. And from that time, which was 12 years ago, this is the 6th Woman-to-Woman. From that time of 200 women, we are expecting 1,500 to 1,800 women this year. And it is a huge help to the budget, of course, for Jewish Family Service. And also started a program called Society of Life, which is just a set amount that you give every year. And it doesn't It didn't go for tickets, it didn't do anything. It was just an annual pledge, and that has been grown and grown and grown. And so it's another wonderful way to raise money for.
That's absolutely spectacular.
And through these affairs, the Woman-to-Woman and Society of Life, and they have so many other things, the annual meetings, but now people really understand the enormous work. And it was a way to help. They have a program for the elderly, they help children, they help. So by working for Jewish Family Service, you're covering all the needs that are in your heart, the old, the young, the sick. They do now special needs. They're just beginning a program for soldiers that come back from Afghanistan who need some psychiatric help and can't afford it.
So many people really did not know about what Jewish Family Service does.
I really didn't know. But once I found out, I was hooked. And I think that if you can only work for one organization, that covers so much.
And yet it is still a recipient of Federation funds.
A big recipient of Federation funds, and now part of United Way. And the Catholic Diocese, however you say that, works with them. And they are called on to really do a lot of work in the city. They were the first agency there when Katrina hit, and they really were incredible. They placed more people in their food banks, and really were renowned for their work with Katrina in Dallas.
And the Jewish Family Service is not only for Jews.
Absolutely not. That's what and we work with the schools for teenage girls. They're in a lot of public schools, and they are constantly asked to do other jobs throughout the city that are not Jewish causes.
It's just amazing. So there are a few years when you haven't had a woman-to-woman luncheon. So.
Well, it alternates with another affair every other year, which is honoring a person in the community. It's called, what is it called? But it's, one year it's the Woman-to-Woman affair and Love of Family. And the next year it's Love of Family, and they honor one person or one group that has done
This year, the guest speaker is a Jewish woman who is an entertainer, who is Bette Midler. How did you choose her?
Well, it just has evolved into, we were really the first two, we were used local. I mean, our first one was Susan Dell, from whose father and mother live in Dallas and grew up in Dallas. Mm-hmm. And now, and also we try to have philanthropic people, and they have a great foundation. And the next year, Susan Katz, who's the head of Neiman's. And then we were getting big, and we decided we needed to try to branch out and maybe try some bigger people. And then we've had Diane von Furstenberg, we've had Joy Behar, and it just it worked, and we were attracting more and more women. And Marley Maitland, who was deaf, because that year we began the special needs program, and we try to tie it in. Mm-hmm. And Bette Midler is really our biggest draw, and this luncheon is becoming, my hope and aim is for this luncheon to be the biggest women's affair in Dallas and attract, and it is, it's attracting all sorts of corporations and that aren't Jewish. We're having a lot of people come that aren't Jewish.
It's really extraordinary, and a lot of men come too.
And a lot of men. And it is a charity for the whole city. It is not Jewish, but we do love to keep the name Jewish Family Service, because...
How has Dallas changed during the space of your lifetime? You said growing up was so much fun. And
it was wonderful. When I drove to SMU to go to college, it's the Central Expressway stopped at Mockingbird. I got off there, which was great because that's where it, but I couldn't go any farther if I wanted to. And oh my goodness, I mean, what has happened to our city and to the growth and to the arts. Particularly, I think the arts district is just phenomenal. And Dallas has become an incredible, fabulous city. I mean, and in technology, and I've seen, you know, where we had a telephone with 3 party lines, I mean, to our cell phones and everybody on their cell phones, and what's going on today is amazing. And I'm not so sure it's all that great. Yeah, it might have been nicer just to sit and listen to your party line, you know.
what if you can look back at some of the real, I mean, you've had so many high points we can all imagine, but tell us a few of the things that remain just before you go to sleep, or maybe you dream about things that have happened to you, standing before a whole audience of people and being honored by the Jewish Family Service. I remember that. Tell us about some of the high points, because you have had a life filled with highs.
I would say a high point was just growing up with my sisters and my mother and my grandparents and the wonderful times. Of course, my children have always been the center of my life, and watching them grow and marry and have children. Each time a child is born, they say, is an affirmation of God. And it is. I mean, it is a true blessing. Every time you see a healthy child, you're so happy. That's always a highlight.
That is true.
And these great-grandchildren are amazing to see, to believe that I've come that far. I've loved working with charities. I loved working. It was fun.
And you've been married now, too.
And I also have to say, been married now for 13 years to Eugene Zale, and been a part of their work. I think one of the things I'm most proud of his family and their work, of course, is the Zale Lipshe Hospital. And I have become very involved with Southwestern because I had breast cancer and was very, very lucky and was treated there and still go there. And I work with the volunteers there. We have a tea or a lunch every year when we invite, I give it for the volunteers. We invited one of the doctors, and he fills us in on all the new medicine. And my oldest son, who's a doctor, just became on staff at Southwestern, so I'm very involved, and I think it's a great medical center.
That's extraordinary. You've been touching the most important, or some of the most important things that Dallas has to offer, and made an impact on all of them.
Well, I've made a very small impact, but it's been my privilege to be involved in some of these wonderful things.
Well, we're very lucky to have you as a premier resident of Dallas and a mover and a shaker. Thank you so much. It's
Thank you.
Been a privilege. And Ethel, you have covered so much of your life. You've done a really good job of summing it up. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about before we end?
Just that I have always thought and tried to teach my children that we are so blessed, and if we can live our life to make one little difference, just one small piece that would help others and help humanity, then we have lived a good life. And I feel very privileged that I was given the opportunity and to be able to do my charity work, whatever it is, and hopefully to do something to help make this world a better place and to leave a little part of me in humanity and in this world. And that has been my privilege and my gift more than I have ever gifted others. And I'm thankful to God for the privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you.